listening to Right, Season 2, Episode 4. Hello and welcome to the Right podcast, your weekly pep talk for the writing life. I am Elon.
I'm John.
And I'm Craig.
And today we're going to be talking about when you need a swift kick in the rear. John, do you want to call us into what we're talking about?
Yeah, today we're going to talk about productivity for the most part. Now, productivity is hard. I think most people, nobody really would deny that, although maybe there are some who can just keep going and not get distracted. But for the rest of us, how do we stay focused? How do we improve what we do? And how do we avoid procrastination? That's what we're going to talk about today.
Yeah, and this is a topic that's really near and dear to my heart because I struggle it's kind of like my own Sisyphean stone. You know, I get a little bit productive and then it just rolls back down the hill and I need to rebuild my method for staying on track. And it's a topic that gets talked about a lot, actually, and I think it's even one of the bigger distractions that I personally have, which is obsessing over methods for getting things done. So I'll do research on apps or techniques or notebook styles or whatever, and it ends up eating a ton of my time that could have otherwise been spent productively, and that is deeply ironic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're talking about productivity, and I think when we look at that, I want to be more productive. I mean, for myself, I've found that chasing that holy grail, if you will, is more about the opposite, which is how can I be less distracted? How am I being distracted? And what is eating at my productivity? We kind of have this underlying tendency to procrastinate. And why do we do that? And it's exploring that problem. As far as I'm concerned, I think it's a work in progress for all of us. But I have found for myself the breakthroughs I've had have come from figuring out or identifying ways that I get distracted and how to counter that.
And for me, it's been a process of identifying my habits and, like John said, my distractions. So when am I productive and why am I productive and how can I replicate that? And then when am I distracted? How am I distracted? And how can I eliminate that? And I think I've been pretty successful at that.
If I'm not mistaken, you write hundreds of thousands of words a year, right?
Yeah, I think last year in 2015, I think I wrote about 340,000 words. This year, I haven't been keeping track, but I've written at least, I want to say at least 200,000, probably closer to 300,000. And for me, the secret is I need multiple projects going on at once, because if I get distracted in a project, it's so easy to go on Facebook, go on Twitter, check out some blogs that I like. But if I have multiple projects, then I just jump into one that's calling my attention. So like right now, for instance, I think I've got 4 projects that I'm actively writing. I've got 2 more projects that are with editors, and I've got 2 more projects that are sort of on the back burner, and the plots are forming and developing in my mind. So that's 7 or 8 projects I've got going on at once. That's my key to being productive. And then also, as we talked about in the last episode, social media can be pretty distracting. So I've deleted almost my entire Facebook profile, so I do not get distracted by Facebook anymore.
And was Facebook sort of like the core distraction?
It was, yeah. So now I've found other core distractions, of course, but none of them are as time-consuming as Facebook. So I read some geeky blogs, and that's about it.
I think identifying the biggest distraction in your life is definitely, it's a difficult admission. I know that mine is video games. I know that. I admit it. My name is Elon, and I play video games. It's hard if it's something that you enjoy doing. Like if you enjoyed Facebook, and then you have to leave it behind, um, it can be a bothersome thing to do. And so my solution for that is, the machines that I write on don't have video games installed on them, period.
Yeah.
So like I have my MacBook Air, which is where I do most of my writing, and I do not have any games on it. And if I'm not writing on that, I'm writing on my iPad, which has full screen Scrivener, so I can't really be, multitasking on it as well as I could, say, on a computer. And then if I'm not using either of those things, I'm writing with a pen and paper, which has the only video games that has, are none.
I think, Elon, you made a great point in that, if we have different distractions. You might be able to identify yours. If you remove it, there's other things that come up. And so distraction is just there because there's this war in us between instant gratification for the present self and then delayed gratification for the future self. We want to write our book. We want to get our editing project done. And we see that reward in the future. But right now there's the now, which is, I'm distracted. I don't want to do this. I want to play video games. And if you can't play video games, you'll think of something else. One technique that I use that I find really helpful, and I'm going to give an example of my workday yesterday. It was a horrible workday. I was so distracted. And of course, I identified that about 2/3 of the way through. I had set some milestones I was supposed to get through 50 pages of editing. In the end, I got through 26. So it's okay. It's better than 2. But what happened was I just realized when I was about 15 pages in and I hadn't even I was setting 10-page milestones, and I realized that just wasn't working. So I decided that I am going to set 1-page milestones, and I was distracted because I wanted to go and work on some other project that I was more interested in. That wasn't a priority, but it was something that, well, it was a priority, but it wasn't related, didn't have a deadline. I wasn't being paid for it. So what I did is I allowed myself a very brief time to work on that other thing, but only when I got through 1 page of editing. So because of that, I actually got through some editing, and that actually has a name. It's called temptation bundling. It's sort of a anti-procrastination technique, and there are many forms it can take on. It's where you associate something that you enjoy doing with getting the work you don't enjoy doing done. I love playing chess. I usually play it on my phone with different apps, and I find that if I'm distracted, I'll be like picking my phone up and seeing if my opponents have moved yet. So what I do is I try to set milestones, and I say I am not allowed to pick my phone up until I hit this milestone. And if it's not a really distractible day, that tends to work. But I mean, that's an example that I've used of that, and I find it really helps.
Yeah, the notion of rewarding yourself is, it seems almost juvenile that we would have to trick ourselves that way, but it's totally real. There are a lot of different ways to do it, though. It's interesting too that this idea that something that we really love to do can be like pulling teeth, because that can send you in the path of like imposter syndrome. Like, if I like doing this, why am I not doing this? It's a weird sort of like philosophical question that I ask myself from time to time, because it's so easy for me to get distracted. And so that brings me to this idea of like self-judgment and self-loathing that can come from being unproductive. Like I deal with anxiety and depression, and I'm medicated for that. And a big part of why was because of work-related stress. And it took a lot of concerted effort to not judge myself harshly for falling off task. Because we are, as people, more than the sum of our productivity. It's a difficult thing to admit. It's very like therapeutic, though, to be like, I am not my word count. And it sounds silly to have to say, but a lot of people myself included, get really caught up on whether or not we're productive, and we feel self-worth based on that productivity. And it's hard to be productive when you feel bad about being unproductive.
Mhm.
It's a what is that called? A vicious cycle, a virtuous cycle. It's bad feels. And they prevent you from working hard because you're just caught up feeling bad about not working hard. So I guess my very personal anecdote can be summarized as don't judge yourself too harshly. We all fall off task, and we all need to get back on the horse, and not everyone can be Brandon Sanderson. And even Brandon Sanderson probably can't be Brandon Sanderson all the time.
What I hear coming through and what you've just said is that, and this is sort of related, we hold ourselves to much higher expectations than anybody else does, and we hold ourselves to much higher expectations than we hold other people to. And it's just part of human nature. We are incredibly hard on ourselves. And so when we say, you know what, I'm not productive, I'm not good, I can't do this. But you know what, in reality, we are actually, for the most part, pretty productive, and we are pretty good at what we're doing. But for some reason, we have this, whatever comes above gold standard, platinum standard, diamond standard, we have a diamond standard that we set for ourselves that is literally impossible to achieve. Like, that's been a big struggle of myself as well, is to realize, you know what, I want to write this type of book, but I don't have to be the master of the genre. I need to write as best as I can. I have to recognize that's good enough. And I have to recognize that I always have room to grow. I don't have to be perfect right from the start.
Yeah, so acknowledging is definitely it's 50% of this very difficult process. But going back to sort of the overarching theme of this episode, how do you self-administer that kick in the butt?
Well, one of the things that I guess I could throw in, this is a little bit of a different direction, but it is something that has helped me personally gain more focus in my work. I started a mindfulness meditation practice back in September 2016, so a couple months now. And I mean, I knew about meditation, I'd heard about it, but I read a productivity article, and there was research done saying it's been shown that a simple meditation practice helps improve your focus. So I thought, I'll give it a try. I discovered an app called 10% Happier. I think it's only available for iPhones, but I mean, for me, I just wanted something simple that had, someone would talk you through it. And what I like about this app is it's completely secular and science-based. So they just teach you to kind of sit there and just focus on your breath. And whenever your mind wanders off, be aware that you've done that. And so, I sit there for 5-10 minutes in the morning, and then I thought, this is kind of neat. So I do it twice a day now, at the beginning and the end. And what I've found is, over time, when I work in the day, when I get distracted, I find I'm much more likely to notice that. And sometimes it's just like when you're trying to meditate and you notice that you've wandered from trying to focus on your breath. There's no judgment. There's no, I got to get back to this. You just, I wandered off. And that little bit of that type of thinking has helped me tremendously in my work. I mean, I'm not trying to say everyone should meditate. That's more just my personal experience with it. But I find if you can find a way to be aware that you were distracted, that's half the battle. That's like the magic moment right there. It's sort of when we don't have any way of being aware, I'm distracted, I better take some action. I mean, I might not have the 5-cylinder, or is it 4? No, there's no 5-cylinder vehicle.
4 or 6.
4 or 6. Okay, 6-cylinder firing day that I wanted to have. But you know what? At least I'm taking action, and I gave the example of me the other day where it was like I got through 26 pages and not 50, but if I didn't have that insight 2/3 of the way through, I probably would have stopped at 15 or 16 and played Angry Birds or something. So yeah.
I like that. I mean, mindfulness meditation has become very popular down here in San Francisco because of like the overwhelming obsession with tech in this area. And I think that what that comes down to is that self-care requires like a moment of silence, a little bit of a break. And so maybe if meditation's not your thing, just like go for a 5-minute walk. It's tough to get out of the chair and go, but it really does help. And for me, actually, the most productive writing time I have, and this is going to sound really weird, there are 2 places where I'm most productive as a writer. One is between the hours of 2 and 5 a.m., which is that's not a very helpful time because I have a day job and I have a life that really can't sustain that. And the other is when I'm walking to work, when I'm walking to the train, when I'm on the train, and when I'm walking from the train station to work. I have Scrivener on my phone, and I just sort of am in this environment where there's so much around me that for some reason I can just kind of like turn inward and get writing done. It's really odd. I've written thousands and thousands of words on my commute.
Yeah, for me, it's a little bit more location based. There are certain coffee shops where I know if I go there, I'm going to be productive versus other coffee shops where I know if I go there, I'm going to be miserable. And it's sort of like it has to have good coffee. The coffee bar area can't be too noisy. The place can't be too crowded. And the seating has to be comfortable. And even then, sometimes there just has to be a certain vibe that gets me into it. So unfortunately, it can get kind of expensive sometimes because I'm always buying a coffee, and I'm a bit of a sweets person, so I always buy a cookie or a brownie or something with it. But I know that if I'm having trouble being productive, I need to go to one of these 2 coffee shops.
Yeah. So we're just about at the point of our episode where we need to get John's recommendation for some reading materials. John, do you want to give your pitch for James Clear? James Clear?
James Clear, yeah, it's a newsletter that I discovered a couple months ago. So James Clear writes about a lot of topics that relate to the creative entrepreneur's lifestyle. I think it extends to anybody who just wants to be more productive, whatever their lifestyle may be. He covers health, productivity. He talks about how to get projects done. So it's more along those lines. But it's a great newsletter. He sends 2 out a week. His website's easy to find. You can either just Google James Clear, or it's jamesclear.com. And all of his articles are available for free on his website. He has a habits training workshop, if that interests you. It's quite popular. I think he has 350,000 subscribers to his newsletter, and he has a book that's coming out through one of the big 5 publishers in a year or 2. But I mean, I love it. I'm very intentional about the newsletters I subscribe to. I unsubscribe to something if I find that I'm never getting anything out of it. But his is one that I look forward to in my inbox. Lots of tips that he shares. In fact, a lot of the things I talked about today, different techniques for ways to overcome procrastination, picked up lots of little things from his newsletters over time. So I highly recommend it.
Excellent. That's jamesclear.com. Yes. So as I mentioned earlier, I spend far too much time looking for digital solutions for productivity management, for task management, really, because I have a lot of different tentacles touching a lot of different things right now. But I've found that, like, when it comes down to is the term brass tacks? I don't know if it's the term, but when it comes down to sort of the essence of staying on task, a paper and pen journal has been the most effective way for me to get through a day productively. I write down the things I need to do. If it's 3 things or if it's 8 things or whatever it is, they could be totally disparate from each other and not connected to the same project. But if I physically write down these items and then I go through the list, it's like, this is what I'm doing next, and then I leave the paper somewhere and then I go do the thing. And I've found that just works for me. And so as a result, I now collect notebooks and pens almost obsessively, and I keep one with me at almost all times. Even though I have digital solutions for tracking sort of longer term stuff, I keep my day-to-day in pen and paper. What do you guys use?
I use a day planner, like a school agenda planner, similar to you. I need to write out the different tasks that I need to do. Unfortunately, I have a habit of when I get behind on things, I close that daily planner and I put it away, and I don't pull it out until I feel like I'm on top of things again. But I can't get on top of things if I don't have my to-do list in front of me. So it's a bit of a vicious circle. So this recording this episode is reminding me that, you know what, maybe I should pull that out and take a look and not feel bad about, missing the things that were on there in the last 4 weeks since I last opened it. But yeah, like you, I need to write it down, pen and paper, in a daily planner thing. Because if I have it on technology, I'm not going to look at it, unfortunately.
I'm a bit of a hybrid. I use Asana. It works for me because I use the desktop version, and I have it saved in my bookmarks bar for my Chrome browser. So as soon as I go in, it's sort of ingrained routine for me that I click on the Asana tab, and I have Asana open all day long, and I sort it into list format. However, I find that most of the time there is more to do in a day than I can get done. So lately I've been moving to simple to-do list, like sticky note. At the day before, I will write out about 5 to 6 things that, they're not giant projects. They're things I could get done in about an hour or so. And it'll be my goal to get through that, and it'll be based on what I know is on my to-do list. So anything that's under a deadline, or if I need to just make certain progress, or there's something that I know has got to get done and it'll get forgotten about because I'm too busy, I kind of sift from Asana. But then, of course, if I have a good day and I get through everything, then my wind down process is to then look at my to-do list and kind of analyze that. And there's a couple other short, small things I can do. Sometimes tasks are only 5-10 minutes. It's just checking in on something that I don't want to forget about. And then I'll make my next day's list based on looking at that in the next day. So that tends to be the process that's working for me right now anyway.
Great. So we are at time, and it sounds like we pretty much just did our final thoughts. So before I give the mic to John to give his homework, which I think is actually really helpful, spoiler alert, I already know what it is, I do want to give one final tip, which is get enough sleep. It's something that a lot of people forego. It's a frustrating thing that we have to do this for like a third of our lives. But there is no pill yet that can make sleep not necessary. There are plenty of pills that can make you not want to sleep or unable to fall asleep, but don't do that stuff because it's not actually helpful.
I mean, I'll give my closing exercise here, but before I do, I think that what you mentioned about sleep, that really resonates with me, and I think we should at some point have a follow-up episode just on sleep and lifestyle, because that is as much as a part of productivity and the work that we do as writers as the work itself.
It can be the pajama party episode.
I'm up for that. Yeah.
Let's do that.
There's no feed, so too bad, I guess.
Yeah.
Okay. So Elon, you're right. You know what this is, and so fortunately, you get to have another journal you can add and try this one out on. But for those who don't, this exercise involves getting a little journal. It could be a notebook or whatever, and devote it to tracking what distracts you. So you can bring it with you when you work. So whatever your creative work is, so it's during your writing time or when you're doing stuff that you need to stay focused and you wanna not be procrastinating. In this journal, what you do is every time you catch yourself doing something that is not the work that you should be doing, write it down. Just sort of your goal is to just treat it like a mirror. It could be that I picked my phone up and I checked a text message, and then I noticed I had a Facebook notification. I went into Facebook, and it was an important thing. I went in and got involved in a chat, and then when I closed it, I realized I should check my game, and like it could be that kind of thing. And the purpose is that you're kind of putting it out there, because a lot of times distraction is invisible to us. So use this journal. You might not need to keep going. You might find just doing it for a week or two will give you enough of a pattern, but it's a good practice so you can just be more aware of what it is that distracts you. And then looking for patterns, you might come up with some solutions, some things you can try to counter those.
That is an excellent prompt. I'm going to be doing that immediately. Thank you both for your time. Thank you, everyone. Don't get too hard on yourself if you have not had a productive day. And tune in next week.